The stars over the planet Varix burned like dying candles, their light trembling through clouds of ash and fire. The air was thick with the smell of smoke, melted stone and ancient power. For thousands of years, the dragons of Varix had ruled this world, their roars shaking the mountains and bending the winds, but now only one remained. Varix the Eternal, the oldest of his kind, the last dragon whose wings had once cast shadows across cities and suns. He lay on the cracked earth, his golden scales dull and covered in scars from wars no one remembered anymore. His breath came slow and heavy, and each exhale sent waves of heat rolling through the ruins around him. The sky above him burned red, lightning cracking across dark clouds that wept molten rain. The armies that once feared him were gone. The gods that had tried to cage him were dust, and the stars he once touched with his wings now watched silently as he began to fade. He had lived too long, fought too much, and seen the galaxy change into something cold and heartless. Empires had risen, fallen, and forgotten him. But Varix remembered everything. Every friend, every enemy, every promise. And one promise still lingered in his heart. A promise to a creature smaller and weaker than any dragon. A human. The sound of his claws scraping the stone echoed through the empty valley as he lifted his head for the last time. A storm of burning dust swept around him. His voice, deep as thunder, rolled across the mountains. "Find the human who knows my name," he whispered. The guards standing near him, tall reptilian aliens in black armor, looked at each other in confusion. They had served the dragon for decades, worshipped him as a god, but they had never heard of this human creature. One brave guard stepped forward, kneeling before the great dragon. "My Lord Varix," the soldier said, "the humans are gone, wiped from the star maps long ago." The dragon's eyes opened slightly, glowing gold even through the dust. "Then search the forgotten stations," Varix said softly. "He is still alive. I can feel it." The mountain shook with another thunderclap. The guards bowed deeply, unsure whether to obey a dying god or dismiss his words as the madness of age. But when they felt the ground tremble and the air hum with power, they understood. These were not the words of a broken mind. They were the final wish of a legend. "Find the human who knows my name," the dragon repeated, his voice cracking the air itself as he spoke. A ripple of golden energy shot into the sky, racing into space like a beacon. Every sensor across the nearby systems caught it. Empires paused their wars, scientists tried to decode it. Even the ancient AI networks whispered through the void. "The dragon of Varix calls for a human. Across the galaxy, billions heard the message, but none could understand it. Why would one of the oldest beings in the universe seek a human, a race considered weak, extinct, or irrelevant?" Whispers spread through trade routes and military stations. Some thought it was a trap. Others believed it was prophecy. But far from all the noise, in the cold emptiness between systems, a small maintenance station floated alone. Forgotten by most, it was called Nova 12, a place where broken machines and lonely workers were sent to disappear. Inside its gray halls, the light flickered. A single human janitor mopped the floor, humming softly to himself. His name was Eli Grant. No one really spoke to him. The aliens who worked on the station saw him as slow and harmless, just another relic from a dying species. He didn't mind, he liked being invisible. He spent his days cleaning the reactor rooms, fixing leaks, and staring out the windows at the endless stars. He had once dreamed of flying among them. But life had pushed him down to this small, quiet place. Yet that night, as the golden signal from Varix reached the outer systems, the station lights flickered. The speakers crackled with static, and a strange, deep voice echoed through the halls. "Find the human who knows my name." The words were ancient and powerful. Filled with pain and longing, every creature on the station froze in confusion. But Eli dropped his mop, his face turned pale, his hands shaking. He whispered something no one could hear. Then he looked toward the stars with eyes that were suddenly filled with old memories. Memories he had buried for a lifetime, he whispered. "You're still alive." The others didn't notice. They went back to their tasks, laughing about strange signals and dying myths. But Eli couldn't move. He sat down against the wall, heart pounding. He remembered fire, scales, and a name spoken long ago, Varix. It wasn't just a story to him. He had met that dragon once, centuries ago, when humanity still had hope. He had saved its life, and in return, it had shared with him something no one could understand. A bond, a spark, a piece of its soul. Now that bond was calling again across stars and ages. The dying roar of an ancient being had reached the one person who could still hear it. A janitor on a forgotten station. The galaxy would soon learn that no legend truly dies. Not while a human still remembers its name. Eli Grant had lived most of his life unseen. On the forgotten space station Nova 12, he was just the man with the mop. The one who fixed broken lights and cleaned up oil leaks while others passed him by without a glance. He was the type of human people looked through, not at. The aliens on the station, engineers, pilots, merchants, and thought of him as harmless, maybe even pitiful. He never corrected them, never argued, never showed the sharp mind that hid behind his tired eyes. Each morning, he woke before the others, walked the silent corridors, and began his routine. He liked the sound of the mop sliding over metal floors, the steady rhythm keeping his thoughts quiet. When the engines rumbled and the stars drifted outside the windows, Eli would stop for a moment to stare. He'd whisper to himself, still out there, still burning, before returning to work. But that day things felt different. Ever since the strange message echoed through the station, that ancient voice saying, "Find the human who knows my name," Eli couldn't shake the feeling that the past had found him. He had tried to ignore it, to pretend it was just another rumor passing through the networks. But when he slept, his dreams were filled with fire wings and golden eyes that called his name through the void. At the canteen, the alien crew laughed about the broadcast. They made jokes about myth dragons and crazy humans, saying that even gods were senile now. Eli sat alone in the corner, eating his meal in silence. Kira, a young alien engineer with silver skin and curious eyes, noticed how quiet he was. "You okay, old man?" she asked, sitting across from him. He nodded slowly. "Just thinking." "About what?" she asked. He hesitated, then said softly, "About something that shouldn't exist anymore." Kira tilted her head. "You mean dragons?" Eli looked up, and for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. He whispered, "No, I mean promises after work." He went down to the lower decks, a place most avoided. It smelled of rust and old coolant, filled with abandoned machinery from older generations. In the dim light, he found a corner behind stacks of forgotten crates. He knelt and pulled out a small box made of dark alloy, its surface etched with strange patterns that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. He opened it, and inside lay a broken shard, curved like a fang, glowing faintly gold. When he touched it, the glow brightened, and a deep hum filled the air. Eli's hands trembled. His breath caught. He whispered, "I told you not to call me again." The shard pulsed brighter, and a voice spoke, low, ancient, filled with sorrow. "Eli of Earth, my time is ending. Fulfill the bond." Tears formed in his eyes. "I was just a boy then," he whispered. "I didn't even understand what you were," the voice answered, weaker this time. "You treated me as more than a weapon. That is why I shared my name with you." The light faded, leaving only the soft hum of the station around him. Kira had followed him, quietly curious. When the light vanished, she stepped from behind a crate. "Who are you talking to?" she asked, her tone careful. Eli wiped his eyes quickly. "Just an old mistake." She crossed her arms. "That wasn't a mistake. That was some kind of relic. Ancient tech, maybe." Eli looked at the shard in his palm. The gold dimming. "It's older than this station. Older than most of the empires still standing," he said softly. "And it's dying." Kira frowned. "So what does that have to do with you?" He gave a sad smile. "Once, a long time ago, I helped a creature everyone else wanted to kill." She waited, but he said no more. When she left, her mind buzzed with questions. Who was this janitor, really? And why did the dragon's dying message make him tremble? Later that night, Eli sat by the window of his small cabin. He stared at the distant stars, his reflection mixing with the galaxy beyond. He whispered, "You waited too long, old friend." The shard pulsed once more in his hand. In its light, he could almost see golden wings stretching across the horizon, a voice whispering through the dark, "Find me before my heart turns to stone." Eli stood up. His decision made, he grabbed his old tool belt, packed the shard in a sealed case, and looked around his small, quiet room. It had been his prison for too long. He said softly, "If you're still breathing, then I'll come." Outside, the stars seemed to shimmer brighter for a moment, as if the universe itself had heard him. And deep across the galaxy, the dying dragon opened one eye and whispered, "He heard me." The next morning, Nova 12 was busy again. Engines hummed, traders shouted, and the smell of metal filled the air. But Eli Grant moved like a ghost through the noise, his thoughts heavy and far away. He had spent the night staring at the glowing shard, feeling its warmth pulse with every heartbeat. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same image, a vast golden dragon lying beneath a burning sky. Calling his name, Eli knew what it meant. The bond between them was waking again, something that should have stayed buried. He couldn't run this time, not when the voice of his old friend was fading. Still, how could he explain that to anyone here? Who would believe that the quiet janitor once saved the life of the oldest dragon in the galaxy? As he walked through the lower decks, the commander's voice echoed through the loudspeakers. All crew, report to your stations. Unidentified transmissions detected approaching Sector 9. Eli froze for a moment, his chest tightening. He knew those weren't normal signals, they were dragon frequencies, old and dangerous, the kind of energy that melted fleets and burned worlds. When he reached the maintenance bay, Kira was already waiting for him. Her eyes were wide with excitement. Eli, come see this, she said, pointing to a screen full of strange data. These waves, she whispered. They're matching the pattern of that shard you showed me yesterday. Eli leaned closer, his face pale. They found the signal, he said softly. Who found it? She asked. The ones looking for me, he whispered. Or maybe the ones looking for him, Kira frowned. You're not making sense, Eli sighed. Placing a hand on the console, I told you before. I once helped someone who wasn't supposed to live. He glanced out the viewport toward the stars. That someone is dying and he's calling me back, Kira blinked, unsure if she should laugh or feel afraid. Wait, she said slowly, you mean the dragon? Eli didn't answer, but the silence was enough. That night, when the station lights dimmed, Eli returned to the old cargo bay again. He cleared away the dust, uncovering more relics from forgotten wars, helmets, armor pieces, rusted weapons, and shattered drones. He moved aside a large crate and uncovered something hidden beneath. A small starship, covered in dust and sealed with old codes. It was his. He had hidden it there decades ago under fake registration, waiting for a day he hoped would never come. He opened the hatch, the stale air rushing out with a faint hiss. Inside, everything was coated in a thin layer of dust. He ran his fingers over the controls, whispering, Still here, old girl. The ship's console flickered weakly to life, the ancient system struggling to wake. Kira entered quietly behind him, her voice soft. You built this? Eli smiled faintly. I fixed it more than built it. It was a gift from a friend. Kira looked around, noticing strange symbols engraved on the walls, dragon runes, glowing faintly when touched. What kind of friend gives you something like this? She asked. The kind that once ruled suns, Eli replied, his tone distant. He placed the glowing shard into a slot in the ship's console, and at once the entire cabin lit up with golden light. The engine hummed alive again. A soft voice filled the air, calm, ancient, familiar. Eli of Earth, the bond remains. The cycle ends. Kira took a step back, her eyes wide. Is that? Eli nodded slowly. Varix, he whispered. The last dragon, the voice continued. My body fades, my fire weakens, but the curse endures. Come before the end. The light dimmed again, leaving them in silence. Kira exhaled, trying to understand what she just witnessed. So the message everyone heard, it was him, she said. Eli nodded. And he's dying, she hesitated. Then why call you? He smiled sadly. Because I'm the only one who remembers his name. Eli turned toward the ship's controls, his eyes sharp again for the first time in years. I can't ignore this anymore, he said. Kira crossed her arms. If you're going, I'm coming with you. He looked at her, surprised. You don't know where this leads, he warned. I don't care, she said. I've fixed your engines, I've seen your shard talk, and I just heard a myth whisper your name. She smirked slightly. I'm not missing this. Eli stared at her for a long moment before nodding. All right, he said softly, but this won't be like anything you've ever seen. He powered up the engines, the golden light reflecting off his face. As the ship rose from the floor, dust swirling beneath it, Eli whispered, Hold on, old friend. I'm coming outside beyond the station walls. The stars burned brighter, as if the galaxy itself was waiting and far away on a dying world. A golden eye opened once more in the darkness. The dragon smiled weakly. He's coming. The small ship lifted from the dusty cargo bay of Nova 12. Engines rumbled softly, golden light spilling from its thrusters like liquid fire. Inside the cockpit, Eli Grant sat in silence, his hands steady on the worn controls. Beside him, Kira adjusted the navigation system, her silver fingers gliding across the glowing screen. The ship trembled as it broke free from the station's orbit, leaving behind the cold emptiness of forgotten corridors. Ahead lay the stars, and somewhere among them, the dying world of the last dragon. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Only the soft hum of the engines filled the air. Finally, Kira broke the silence. "So what was he like?" she asked. Eli's eyes stayed on the stars. "Varix?" She nodded, curious. He took a deep breath, his voice quiet. "He was terrifying and beautiful." Kira tilted her head. "Beautiful?" Eli nodded slowly. Yes, not just in form, but in how he thought he was older than empires. Yet he was curious about small things. Rain, music, fire. The way humans laughed, he smiled faintly. He didn't see us as lesser, he saw us as strange. Kira leaned back, watching him carefully. "And you saved him?" Eli gave a small nod. "I tried. He was wounded during the old wars, hunted by fleets that wanted his power. I found him hiding in the ruins of Earth's moon, bleeding light into the craters." He paused. "Remembering, I didn't know who he was. I only knew he was dying." Kira frowned softly. "You helped him even when everyone feared him." Eli smiled without joy. "That's what made me a fool and what made me his friend." Outside, the stars began to warp as they entered jump space. Colors stretched and twisted, forming rivers of blue and silver around the ship. The shard in the console pulsed softly. Guiding their course, Kira stared at it, amazed. "That thing knows the way?" Eli nodded. "It's part of him, a fragment of his soul. It's calling home." For a moment, silence returned, heavy and thoughtful. Hours turned into days. They crossed abandoned sectors filled with debris from ancient wars. Massive shipwrecks floated in silence, monuments to forgotten battles. Kira watched them pass, whispering, "How many times has the galaxy destroyed itself?" Eli replied quietly, "Too many. And each time we tell ourselves it'll be different." When she looked at him, she saw the sadness in his face. Like someone who had lived too long. Then, alarms suddenly blared. "Unidentified ships detected," Kira shouted. Scanning the radar, 3 dark vessels emerged from the shadows, their hulls marked with red sigils. "The scavenger lords," she gasped. "They hunt for relics. They must have traced the shard's signal." Eli tightened his grip on the controls. "They want what's inside this ship." Kira read the sensors. Panic in her voice. "They're locking weapons." Eli's eyes narrowed. "Not today." He pulled a lever, the ship jolting as golden light flared across its surface. The shard reacted, glowing brighter, spreading energy through the hull. When the scavenger ships fired, their plasma bolts vanished before impact. Absorbed by the golden field, Kira's eyes widened. "What is that?" Eli said softly. "A gift he gave me long ago. Protection born from trust." He angled the ship down into a swirling storm of asteroids. Dodging sharp rocks and burning debris, the scavengers followed but soon broke formation. Overwhelmed by the glowing trail left behind, in moments, the silence returned. The danger gone, Kira sat back, breathing hard. "That was insane." Eli smiled slightly. "You get used to it." Then the shard pulsed again. Stronger than before, Eli's face grew serious. "We're close," he whispered. Outside the window, space rippled, and then, like a curtain lifting, a world appeared. It was massive and dark, glowing cracks running through its surface like molten veins. Storms of red lightning circled the poles. Kira gasped. "That's it." "The forbidden planet," Eli nodded slowly, eyes wide with awe. "The world of dragons," he murmured, "and the grave of gods." As they descended through the thick clouds, the temperature inside the ship rose. The atmosphere shimmered with golden dust. Each particle humming faintly, Kira whispered. "This place feels alive," Eli replied softly. "It is. Everything here was once shaped by his fire." When they finally broke through the clouds, the view stole their breath. Below them stretched endless valleys of glowing stone and rivers of lava that sang like voices. Mountains curved like sleeping beasts, and in the center of it all stood a massive crater. Inside it lay the dragon, Varix, his wings folded, his body cracked with lines of light. He looked like a mountain made of gold and sorrow. Eli felt his throat tighten. "He's still alive," he whispered. Kira placed a hand on his shoulder. her voice trembling. Then we're not too late. The ship landed softly near the edge of the crater. The ground vibrated with the slow fading heartbeat of something ancient. Eli stepped down, the heat kissing his skin. He took a deep breath and whispered, "I'm here, old friend, from the crater." A golden eye opened, and vast, gentle, and filled with pain. The dragon's voice echoed across the land, low and tired. "You came." Heat shimmered across the ground as Eli and Kira stood before the massive form of the dragon. Varix lay in the center of the crater, his wings curled around him like broken shields. His scales, once bright as suns, were now dull and cracked, glowing faintly from the fire still trapped within. Each breath he took was slow, like the wind of a dying storm. Shaking the molten air around them, Kira could barely breathe, her body trembling from the sheer pressure that radiated from him. Even in weakness, Varix felt larger than life itself. Eli took a cautious step forward, the heat biting at his skin. He raised his hand slowly, his voice quiet and full of sorrow. "It's been a long time, old friend," he whispered. The dragon's golden eye opened, its glow washing over him like sunlight through tears. The deep voice rumbled from the earth itself. "Human," Varix said softly, "you came." "As you promised," Eli smiled faintly, his throat tight. "I almost didn't," he said. "You were supposed to live forever." The dragon's head tilted. A sound like thunder mixed with laughter escaped him. "Forever," Varix said, "is longer than I imagined." Kira stepped closer, shielding her face from the heat, her voice trembling. "You're the real Varix," she whispered, awe filling every word. The dragon's gaze turned toward her, calm and heavy. "And you are brave to stand before me, child of metal and starlight," he said. Eli looked at the cracks in the dragon's body, the golden light seeping from them like slow rivers. "What happened to you?" he asked quietly. Varix's wings twitched, sending small waves of ash into the air. "I carried too much fire for too long," he said. "When the wars ended, I thought peace would heal me, but it only reminded me of the lives I burned." His voice grew softer. "They called me a god, but I was just tired." Eli stepped closer until his hand rested on the dragon's warm scale. "I told you once," Eli said gently. "You were more human than most people I knew." Varix's massive head lowered slightly, his eye closing. "And you, Eli Grant," he said, "were more dragon than most kings I ever met." Kira watched them, unable to speak, feeling like she was witnessing a story written before her birth. Varix's breath grew slower. "There is still a bond between us," he whispered. "A piece of my fire within your heart." Eli nodded. "I still feel it," he said. "Every night since you vanished." The dragon's voice deepened. "Then you know why I called you." "The curse must end," Eli frowned. "Curse?" Varix nodded slowly, his giant claws scraping the stone beside him. "When I shared my fire with you, it connected our souls, it gave me peace, but also chained my life to yours. Now my fire refuses to die while my body fades." Eli's eyes widened. "So if I live, you can't rest?" Varix nodded, his voice soft. "And if I die, your heart will turn to ash." Kira took a step back, her voice breaking. "There has to be another way." The dragon's golden gaze moved toward her again, kind but certain. "There is," he said. "The fire can be passed, not destroyed, but it must be done by choice." Eli looked down, his voice barely above a whisper. "You want me to take it?" Varix's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Only one who knows my name can carry it, only you." The air trembled with power as silence fell between them. Eli looked at the dragon's massive form, the cracks glowing brighter, the heat rising, the smell of old smoke filling the valley. He remembered the first time he met Varix, the wounded creature hidden beneath the moon's ruins, begging not for mercy but for understanding. He remembered offering his hand instead of fear. And now, standing here again, he felt the same choice before him. Kira's voice cracked. "If you do this, what happens to you?" Eli turned toward her, his eyes calm. "I live," he said softly, "but I won't be the same." She shook her head. "You'll die too." He smiled faintly. "Maybe a part of me will." He stepped closer to Varix, placing both hands on the glowing scale above the dragon's heart. The shard in his pocket began to burn, pulsing with golden light. Varix's massive wings lifted slightly. The wind roared through the crater as the light grew blinding. "Then let this be our final promise," Varix said, his voice shaking the world. "That fire will never be used for hate again," Eli said firmly. Their voices joined, human and dragon as one. And then the valley exploded in golden light. Kira shielded her eyes, falling to her knees. The air rippled like waves of heat, and the mountain itself seemed to breathe. When the light faded, Varix's body was still. The dragon's heart no longer glowed. His mighty form resting in silence, Eli stood beside him, the air around him shimmering faintly with gold. His eyes were brighter now, his chest glowing with a faint ember. He whispered, "Rest now, my friend, I'll keep the fire." The crater was silent now. The heat had softened into a gentle warmth that rolled through the air like the breath of a sleeping world. The massive form of Varix no longer moved, his golden scales slowly turning to pale stone. The storm clouds that had hung over the planet began to fade, parting to reveal stars shining through the smoke. Kira stood trembling near the edge of the crater, her eyes fixed on the still figure of Eli Grant. He stood beside the dragon's heart, surrounded by faint ripples of light that swirled around him like tiny suns. Eli's head was bowed, his hands resting on the cold scale of his fallen friend. His clothes were scorched, his skin burned, yet he looked calm. Golden energy pulsed from his chest, steady and rhythmic like a second heartbeat. Kira took a hesitant step forward, calling softly, "Eli." He turned slowly, his eyes glowing faintly, not like fire but like sunrise. The light flickered across his face, gentle yet unearthly. For a moment, she didn't see a janitor anymore. She saw something older, something vast. "Is he gone?" she whispered. Eli looked at the dragon's silent body and nodded. "He's free," he said quietly, his voice carrying both sorrow and peace. Kira's throat tightened. "Then, what about you?" Eli glanced at his hands, small traces of golden light drifting from his skin. He smiled faintly. "I guess I keep his promise now." The air shimmered as the planet itself seemed to shift. Lava rivers cooled into crystal blue streams. The cracked earth healed, and from the ash, green sprouts began to rise. It was like the entire world was exhaling for the first time in ages. Kira watched in awe as flowers bloomed from glowing soil and the red sky faded into calm gold. She whispered, "You're changing the planet." Eli shook his head. "Not me," he said softly. "Him, through me." A distant rumble echoed from the horizon. Varix's final fire, the energy of a dying god, flowed through the veins of the world, carried now by a human heart. Eli stumbled slightly, the light flaring brighter around him. Kira ran forward, grabbing his arm. "You're burning up," she cried. He gave a soft laugh. "It's fine. I just need to learn to breathe again." The golden glow faded slowly, leaving only a faint shimmer around him. He looked tired but alive, deeply alive. Kira helped him sit down on a rock near the dragon's wing. For a while, neither spoke. The night above them glittered with new stars, and small, golden and unfamiliar. "Are those?" Kira began. Eli nodded. "The fragments of his soul," he said. "The last light of the dragons," she smiled faintly. "You speak like one of them now." Eli chuckled softly. "Maybe I am, in a way." He looked up at the stars, his voice softer now. "He told me once that dragons never die. They just become stories carried by those who remember them." Kira's eyes glistened. "And now you're his story." Eli turned to her, his expression calm and thoughtful. "No," he said. "I'm just the keeper of it." The planet around them was quiet and peaceful. The rivers glowed faintly, reflecting the starlight. For the first time in centuries, Varix's world was free from pain. Kira leaned back, sighing. "So what now?" Eli smiled. "Now I clean up." She blinked in confusion. "Clean up?" He laughed softly. "It's what I do best over the next few hours." He worked like the janitor he'd always been. He gathered broken fragments of scales, buried them beneath the crystal soil, and carved words into the ground. Words written in both human letters and dragon runes. "Here rests Varix, friend of man," when he finished. He placed his mop, the same old tool he carried every day, beside the grave. Kira frowned. "That's your mop." He nodded, smiling faintly. "It's my offering." They stood in silence for a while, the wind brushing softly through the valley. Kira finally spoke, her voice low. "He'd be proud of you." Eli looked toward the horizon where the dragon's mountain stood. "I think he'd laugh," he said gently. "He always said I was too stubborn to die." Then the shard, still resting in the ship's console, glowed one last time. A soft, familiar voice echoed in the air, faint but warm. "Eli of Earth, my fire is safe, my heart is calm." Thank you. Eli closed his eyes. Tears slipping down his face, he whispered, "Sleep well." My friend, the light faded, and the world was still again. Kira touched his shoulder. "We should go," she said softly. Eli nodded, standing slowly, his gaze lingering on the massive stone form one last time. He whispered, "You kept your promise. Now it's my turn." Together they walked back to the ship, the sky above them glowing faintly gold as the engines lifted them toward the stars. The ground below shimmered, the dragon's grave glowing like a sunrise. The fire within the janitor burned quietly, not to destroy but to heal, and the galaxy, though it did not yet know it, would soon remember his name. Weeks passed since the light of the dragon faded across the skies of Varix. The world had changed, reborn from ashes into quiet beauty. Golden rivers now flowed where lava once burned, and crystal forests rose where there had been only dust. Life had returned, slow but strong. But Eli Grant, the man who carried the fire, had left. His small ship drifted among the stars once more, silent and unmarked, back on Nova 12. Few remembered the strange burst of golden light that had rippled across the galaxy. Most thought it was a glitch, a passing anomaly. Only Kira knew the truth, and she carried it like a secret flame in her heart. When their ship landed, the crew barely noticed them return. The janitor went back to his old post, sweeping the same gray corridors, fixing the same broken lights, no medals, no titles, no songs, just the quiet rhythm of his mop against the floor. But something had changed in the air around him. The lights glowed a little warmer where he passed. The plants in the hydro room grew faster, stronger, and the tired workers said the station felt lighter somehow. No one could explain it, they only said, "The old janitor's lucky to have around." At night, Eli would sit by the small window of his quarters. He'd stare out at the stars and whisper to them, "Still watching? Aren't you?" he'd say softly. Sometimes, a faint golden shimmer would pass through the dark sky, and he'd smile, knowing his friend was still near. Kira often joined him, sitting on the floor with a cup of tea. She never spoke much about what happened on Varix, but sometimes when she looked at him, she saw a faint light behind his eyes, a warmth that made her believe in impossible things. "You could tell them," she said one night. Eli shook his head gently. "They wouldn't believe me." "They should," she said. "You saved a god." He smiled faintly. "No, I saved a friend." In time, whispers began to spread beyond the station. A few pilots passing through claimed to see a human fixing ships with his bare hands. They said he healed broken reactors just by touching them. Others said they saw his eyes glow like fire when he was angry. Some even claimed that when he mopped the station floor, golden dust sparkled behind him like stars. People laughed, but the stories spread. And like all stories that carried truth, they grew wings, soon. Other stations began to speak of the Keeper of Fire, a human janitor who walked among machines and made them breathe again. Children whispered his name before sleeping. Old engineers left tools beside their bunks at night, hoping the Keeper would bless them. And in the far colonies, miners swore they saw a golden shadow move through the dust storms. Calming the winds, Eli never asked for fame. He didn't even know about the legends growing in his name. One day as he walked the corridor, a small alien child stopped him. Her scales shimmered like blue glass, and she held a tiny flower in her hand. "Mr. Janitor," she said shyly, "Mama says you're magic." Eli knelt, smiling softly. "No, not magic, just stubborn." The child giggled, handing him the flower. "Then you should have this. For your work." He accepted it gently, placing it in his pocket. When he looked up, he saw Kira watching from across the hall, smiling, and for a moment he felt at peace. Later that night, Eli went back to the observation deck. The stars shimmered brighter than usual. He leaned against the window, whispering quietly, "You see that, old friend? They're telling stories about me now." The faintest rumble of laughter seemed to echo in the distance, carried through the silence of space. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. He smiled. "Yeah, I know you'd find it funny." The next morning, the commander found Eli's mop neatly leaning against the wall. His cabin light was still on, but the bed was empty. Kira searched the station for hours, but he was gone. No escape pods were missing. No ships had launched. Only a faint trail of golden dust floated near the window where he used to sit. And outside the station, among the endless stars, a new constellation had appeared. A dragon with a man beside it, both shining bright. The galaxy never forgot the story that followed. They said a janitor once carried the fire of a dying god. They said he swept the stars clean of sorrow, and whenever a storm of golden light passed through deep space, travelers whispered softly, "The keeper of fire is still at work."